This is Solo in the Shop. On today's episode, I want to talk about overnight success and what that actually looks like. Let's jump right in. Whether you are a hobbyist, weekend warrior, making commissions for friends and family, or already a full-time maker, if you are solo in your shop, this is the show for you. I'm Ronald Lowe's, the host of Solo in the Shop, a woodworking podcast discussing everything from current projects, tools and techniques, decisions around running a small business, and much more. So if you frequently find yourself alone and covered in sawdust, follow my journey and we can be solo in the shop together. Hello, friends. Crazy times at the shop. I have 8 tables on the queue, and this week I actually hired some part-time help. I've got a high school guy that's coming in to help lift tables. I've got him working on the Rotex, getting comfortable with sanding on some sample pieces, and I'm really excited about that change. I think even 5 or 6 hours a week just getting some help with cleaning up and moving things around is going to increase my efficiency quite a bit. I have 3 tables that I need to finish for Thanksgiving, and I have 3 more tables that I need to get done for retail. So no shortage of work. It seems like an almost overnight success. Now, granted, there's still the reality of running a woodworking business, which is that material is expensive and deposits come in and get gobbled up by material costs. And then it's not until things are delivered that there's a little bit of relief financially. And it made me think about overnight success and just success in general. I've mentioned before that I'm a member of Paul Mensel's Handcrafted Success Mastermind group. When I posted in that group about how October was going, one of the comments was, what worked? How did you end up with, 8 tables in the queue? That got me reflecting on the whole year and what it took to get to this point. And I do owe a lot of great ideas to that Handcrafted Success group. So if you are woodworking and trying to build a business, it's low money. I definitely recommend it. I will leave a link, as always, in the show notes. When I wrote back to the commenter about what I thought made the difference, I felt like the list that I had was a good topic to discuss in this forum. So in no particular order, the first thing is that I had asked Paul Mensel the exact same question. Like, what is the key to overnight success, and how long does overnight success really take? And his response was that overnight success isn't really a thing. It is a gradual, incremental buildup of changes that contribute to the business growth. Now, at some point, if you imagine a seesaw or scales where you're adding to the bucket on one side over and over and over, drip, 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 eventually that tips the scales in your favor and success is realized. And by success, I mean getting noticed enough that selling becomes easier and that your shop is busy. It doesn't necessarily mean, especially for me, that the money is just rolling in and everything is peachy and you're just sitting on a pile of cash. I don't think that woodworking business by itself works that way. It's definitely more exposure and easier sales process. When I wrote back, the first thing was the idea that it's not an overnight success, but a series of incremental changes. But then I was thinking, what are the incremental changes? And really, a lot of these concepts came out of the mastermind and I'm not going to dilute the value of the mastermind by giving you all the secrets, but I will give you the categories of things that I focused on. And the trick I found was not to focus on all of these things at once, but to pick one, maybe the most important one, and focus on that for 3 or 4 weeks and then move on to the next thing. Hopefully build some kind of system in place so that each thing kind of takes care of itself, or you have a routine built in to your schedule, to your week that addresses each thing. So the first thing was sorting out the words I want to use when I'm selling. And I've mentioned this before, it's very easy to get wrapped up in telling people everything you know about your product and how wonderful your product is and what the story of your business is. When I have found it's much more effective to spend all that energy getting the customer to talk about themselves. Tell me what you envision. Tell me what your situation is. Tell me why you are in the market for what you're in the market for. And let's see if there's a fit. Once we get further down the discussion, we can talk about how my products can solve your problem or how my tables can fit into your weirdly shaped room. That makes the discussion so much easier because I think the clients mostly want to be heard and not be sold. And I spent quite a bit of time working on that and refining that. It's an ever-evolving process, but it was definitely a mindset shift. And I tried lots of different approaches, and I feel like I've improved dramatically in that area so that I'm having much more productive conversations with prospective clients. The next thing we talked about in the mastermind that became very useful is this idea of money hunting. Now, it sounds kind of savage, but it makes sense that if you want to have a healthy business, you need to find money. You need to find customers. And you do that by looking at all the people that have reached out to you, either from messaging apps, texting, phone calls, emails, and look at the state of those conversations and measure what the interest is and contact. Keep the conversation going. You don't want to be a pest, but you want to reach out periodically and say, I want to make sure you're taken care of. Is there anything I can help you with? If you know something specific about the customer, their hot water heater broke, or they're recovering from a flood, or they just sent kids to school for the first time, work that into the conversation. Make it clear that you know who they are. It goes back to the whole sales process, but keep that contact going and figure out who's closest to closing and can you finish that deal to start getting more contracts coming in. Third thing, huge game changer for me, was leveraging Facebook Marketplace. I have gotten a crazy number of leads and exposure and contracts from listing photos of my tables, putting a price on it that is reasonable but low, and indicate very clearly in the listing that the final price is based on the dimensions and the customization that goes into each table, and that these are representative works for a table to be built. Customers seem to understand that idea, and the most common message I get is how much for an 80-inch by 40-inch dining table with the legs shown in this picture. And being efficient and responsive is key on Facebook Marketplace. You cannot let somebody sit for 24 hours and not get back to them. It needs to be closer to 5 minutes to 30 minutes. And the same thing applies, right? Go back to the selling idea. It's easy to just say, oh, that table is $3,000. But what you really want to do is say, this sounds great. Based on what you've said, the table would probably come in the $2,800 to $3,300 range, but let's talk more about your vision. How thick of a table do you want? Have you measured the room? Do you already have chairs? Do you want to send me pictures of the room that it's going into? And really draw them out and encourage them to tell you more and more about the story and their situation. And then say, okay, what I normally do is write up a quote. I've given you an estimate, but I can write up a quote that's very specific about your table. We'll have details about the finishing and the extra materials and the legs and, the start date and the anticipated delivery date. Do you want to provide an email address? I'll send that to you today. Once I get that email address, I'm going to send them that quote, but I'm also going to send them, I have an article about working together, and I have an article about cosmetic standards, and I like to send both of those. And I encourage them to look at my website, because from Facebook Marketplace, which you have to do as an individual, not as a business, I say, if you want to see more of my work, go over here to newenglandtablecompany.com and check out my work. The next thing that we cover in the mastermind that I definitely exploit, less so right now just because I'm so busy. I actually don't want as much business as this would generate, but just using paid ads, paying Google and paying Meta to get exposure in search results and on Facebook and Instagram definitely helps. And you can decide whether you want that attention to be focused on getting people looking at your profile on social media, getting them to your website so they can see your work, or getting them to just message you directly saying, hey, I'd have an idea for a project. I find the messaging thing is the most interaction I get, but I also feel like I spend a lot of time wasted with people who are only casually interested and not really in the demographic of people that are looking for a custom table that is relatively expensive. There's a lot of people who just click and are like, this is pretty, how much would it be? And I'm like, $4,500. And they're like, no, that's crazy, I'm not going to do that. And that's fine, but it takes time away, and I'm just too busy to spend all this time messaging with people who are not really what I'd call a qualified prospect. I feel the Google ads are great for getting website traffic, and I put a lot of emphasis on making sure that my website is attractive and represents my work, and that has led to sales as well. You can add your physical address, you can add your phone number to the Google ads. Again, how much interruption do you want with things that are qualified or not qualified? But learning to create and tweak and experiment and measure paid ads is a great skill. And if you spend a few weeks just working with that, it can be very low money, $5 a day. And you'll learn a ton about how that world works so that when you're ready to ramp that up, you've got a good foundation in how paid ads work. And then you can say, okay, now I'm going to spend $20 a day because I know that I'll sell at least one table in 5 days. And spending $100 to get a $3,000, $4,000 sale seems like good business to me. I have two more points. The first is just adding efficiency by having systems in place for keeping track of your contacts and your sales orders and your process and your different checklists. And there's a ton of different tools for that. I've written a bunch myself. I've tried out a few. I'm a big fan of HubSpot. I know Philadelphia Table Company uses Trello and Pipedrive. So at some point I will do an episode on just systems in general because I love the computer side of running a business. But just know that you need to lean on systems to help you with the day-to-day running the business and keeping yourself efficient. And I've also started using Todoist, which is just like exactly what it sounds like. It's a daily checklist, and it can have recurring events. It can have priorities and stuff like that. And you can group things by project if you want. I've found that takes more time than I want it to. So I just have a daily bullet list of things that I want to accomplish. And then I know it kind of keeps me focused on what I need to do. And the last thing that came out of the mastermind that I spent time on and has made a difference is networking and cold outreach. Just being able to figure out ways to connect with other businesses and get in front of more eyeballs, hugely important, and has led to me being very busy with retail customers. So I love the retail idea. Getting tables in front of people who are actually shopping for tables seems the best possible scenario for me. It's tough when you're doing online sales and you're putting ads out for tables, and people may or may not actually be looking for tables. But if you put a table in a furniture store, that's just huge. Anyway, those are 6 things that I've taken away from the Handcrafted Success Mastermind that were drops in my bucket towards incrementally growing this business, and has gotten me to the point where I'm a little overwhelmed with how much work I have, and I'm happy to be at the point where I've added my first part-time employee to help me out. To me, that's great success, great growth. I think the financial side of that will follow. I just need to get out in the shop, finish some tables, start delivering, and then enjoy the rest of the year with a little bit of cash in the bank. That's the plan. I hope this episode was helpful. That's what I have for you this week. Until we talk again, stay safe in your shop. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to me at SoloInTheShop@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got value from it and would like to help the show grow, I'd appreciate a review wherever you listen. Be sure to check the show notes for links to my socials or any extra stuff we discussed today. Until next time, stay safe in your shop, and we'll talk again soon.